Hi there, Chris from Motolegends, Champion the Cap and all of that. Here today to talk about this helmet. It's a new helmet from Shark, it's called the Spartan GT. There's already a Spartan that's been on the market for a couple of years. This helmet was launched at EICMA 2019 with the avowed intention of taking on the Shoei GT Air 2. So we'll come back, we'll go through this helmet in some detail, looking at lots of different aspects of the helmet, and we'll take a view as to whether Shark have succeeded in their ambitious objective. So here we are. This is the Spartan GT. This is the existing Spartan that's been in the range for a while. This helmet is not going to replace, the GT is not going to replace the Spartan, it's going to sit beside it, or rather a little bit above it. But as you can see, it's a similar looking helmet. And I think therein lies one of the issues, in that if you're going to take on Shoei with a helmet that's as preeminent as the GT Air 2, you have to be serious about it. And if I was in the marketing department, if I'd been in the marketing department at Shark when this objective came up, I think I would have done two things. I would have come up with a helmet with a totally new name, because this is going to create confusion in the market. The two letters GT just don't create sufficient differentiation. Even though this is a totally new helmet, which I'll explain in a second, people are going to look at this and go, well, it's just a tarted up Spartan. And indeed, the helmets look visually very similar. These aerofoils on the back, all of the key components, whilst there are differences, the helmets look the same. The other thing that I feel about the Spartan GT is that it's just a little bit too racy to compete in the sports touring market. Now, Shark is very much into their racing. They're very proud of their racing heritage. They have sponsored leading riders in MotoGP like Zarco and Lorenzo. And I think at times they can't get that out of their blood. They come at helmets from a slightly sporty racing perspective. But a helmet like this, a sports touring helmet, you want a helmet like this to be desired and worn by the kind of guys who are riding a GS. And I think that with the spoils, with the aggressive looks of this helmet, I don't think this really cracks it in that respect. So if you look at the sport touring category, this is a helmet. It's still a fine helmet. It's going to be popular, I'm sure, in the market, but I think the emphasis on this helmet is more on the sports side rather than the touring side. And therefore, I'm not convinced that the people who currently come to see us to buy a GT Air 2 are going to be convinced that this is the helmet that they want to wear. There's another issue. It was in the film Wall Street that Gordon Gekko told his protege, if you want to be a big dog, you have to piss in the tall plants. By that, what he meant was, you can't just talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. And if you want to take on Shoei, you've got to do things in a premium fashion. And one of the things that the big boys do, all of their helmets come in at least 3 shell sizes. Every Shoei helmet comes in 3 shell sizes. Same with Arai, sometimes 4 shell sizes. 2 shell sizes is, and this sounds rude, it's in a way cheaping out. It is certainly much easier, much less expensive to develop a helmet with 2 shell sizes, easier and less expensive to manufacture, but a helmet with 2 shell sizes will never fit, will never look quite as good as a helmet that comes in 3 or more shell sizes. The problem is, with 2 shell sizes, if it just so happens that your head ends up being in a shell size larger than you might want, you have a helmet that just looks too big. And to make up the difference, you use extra foam to fill up the space to make it fit, and that doesn't give you a great fit. If the helmet is naturally too big for your head, it will never feel completely right, even though you've got the sponge in. So I think that's not a great starting point for this helmet, that they want to take on Shoei, but they've decided to do it on a budget. I think that is going to work against them ultimately. But let's see, I want to talk through now lots of the features of this helmet. It's a fantastic helmet. It's got lots of trick stuff on it. At the end, we'll come back and we'll take a view as to whether we think this helmet really has matched up to the GT Air 2 or not. So, as you can see, the Spartan GT comes in two versions. It comes in a plain fiberglass version and in what Shark call a carbon skin. Now, Shark does make pure carbon helmets, but at this end of the market, they use a technology that they call the carbon skin. What that means is that they take the fiberglass helmet, so underneath this helmet is a fiberglass shell, but instead of adding the primer and paint, they put the carbon fiber over the top. Now, amazingly, this helmet ends up being lighter because the carbon skin is lighter than the primer and the paint used on this version. I hadn't realized quite how heavy primer and paint were, but on the scales, this medium-sized helmet comes in at 1550 grams. This one comes in at 1450. So really, this isn't about lightness. This is kind of a bling thing. If you like carbon, this will be the version that you would go for. In terms of safety, by the way, there is a perception out there that for some reason carbon helmets are safer. Even if it's a pure carbon helmet, that's not the case. We buy carbon for a number of reasons. It's a stylistic choice. If we've got a race bike with lots of carbon accessories on it, we might want a matching carbon helmet. It's obviously a racing thing, but this helmet is not any safer than this helmet. They're both high-end items of protective wear. We have no qualms about either helmet from that perspective. Traditionally, Shark has had a slightly softer shell. Now, a softer shell means that it's going to absorb impacts particularly well, and that's indeed the case with Sharks. You can have a harder shell. They don't absorb the impacts as well, but they take repeated knocks better. So with a Shark, if you land hard on it, it is very shock absorbent. It's going to look after you very well. Not so good if you have multiple impacts. But you cannot have it both ways. You can either have a softer shell that's more shock absorbing, or you can have a harder shell that is less shock absorbing but takes multiple impacts. You can bet your bottom dollar that when either of these helmets is tested by Shark, here at Motolegends we are not massive fans of the Shark rating system for a number of reasons, but both of these helmets I feel confident are going to come out with 5-star Shark ratings. So in terms of safety, no concerns. This is a fantastic helmet to be riding in. Anyway, let's go on and look at some other aspects of the helmet. So let's look at the visor for the Spartan GT, because it's one of the bigger changes, the most noticeable changes between this and the Spartan. It's a grade 1 optical quality visor. It's a totally new visor, so it's not interchangeable with the visor from the Spartan. Different thicknesses as you go around it to prevent distortion. It fixes into place with a locking mechanism here. Now, that's good on a number of grounds. It's not going to suddenly fly open, but it's going to keep the helmet well sealed. It'll make sure that the helmet's always quiet. It's going to create a nice seal here with the rub at the top to stop water running in. We've been commuting in this helmet for a couple of weeks. In fact, I say we, I mean Sean, because it's way too cold here at the beginning of January 2020 for me to commute. But what Sean has found is that with thick winter gloves, this button can be a wee bit fiddly. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but it's not as intuitive. I suppose it's not as easy as his other helmets where you just put a thumb up and you push it up. But with this mechanism, okay, there's a minor downside to it, but I think the upsides probably outweigh that disadvantage. Another thing this visor's got is a locking mechanism. You lower these two bars here, then the helmet just, once you have unlocked them, then the visor just pulls out. Very simple. Again, simple to put back in and then relock again. You just put these in, turn those up. Now, I'm always suspicious when somebody comes up with a device that nobody ever asked for. Why do we need this? Shark told us that it's to prevent visors coming adrift in an accident. I've never personally seen that. It's never happened to me. I've never come across a customer who said that that has happened. But apparently, their racing experience shows that this does happen. So one can't argue against it. It's a simple device. It's not particularly fiddly, it doesn't get in the way, but if it gives you an added piece of security, then I suppose we cannot complain about that. You've got a full height drop down sun visor. I always liked the sun visors on Shark helmets. They come down particularly low. They always miss the nose. But what I sometimes do, if I'm wearing a Shark, I will, in the summer, I will just remove the visor and then ride like that. So on a nice day, it's a great way of riding. You get some air in. It's much cooler to ride like this. I will keep the main visor, obviously, if I'm coming home at night, but it's quite nice to ride without the external visor, lets lots of air in. The visor comes with a pin lock insert in the box, but this is another mistake that Shark have made. You cannot take on Shoei with a helmet like the GT Air 2 and then save 50 cents by going for a lower grade pin lock. It's just daft. A GT Air 2, as indeed does every Shoei, comes with a pin lock 120. This helmet comes with a pin lock 70. Now it may be that Shark has calculated that the wonderful airflow through this helmet means that you do not need a pin lock 120. But that, I think, is to miss the point. If they want to compete with Shoei, they have to be seen to be doing the best of the best. Shoei sits at the top here. Shark isn't quite there. If they want to produce a helmet that people are going to look at and consider in the same breath, then they need to go the whole 9 yards and match what Shoei are doing. And my view is it's a mistake for them to supply this helmet with a pin lock 170. Let's now move on and talk about some other aspects. Let's talk about the ventilation on this helmet. So venting. The Spartan GT has 3 vents. It's got a chin vent, it's got a brow vent, and it's got an exhaust vent here. The standard Spartan has only 2 vents, so it's certainly an improvement upon that helmet. Really like the chin vent on this. It's an open and closed, there's no variability, but what I like is that when air is coming in here, there's a grill here that's going to send air up the inside of the visor. So I think it's going to be particularly effective at clearing the visor. For maximum airflow, however, to clear a visor, you want air coming into the chin, but then you want it dragged out through the back of the helmet. And that's why, to get the maximum venting, you want to always have the brow vent open. So in this helmet, we've got open is forward, closed is back. If you want to really clean the visor, make sure that it doesn't mist up, you're going to want it open. Now, there's a third vent here that's also an on-off like this one. And my first question to Shark was, why, if you can close this vent, do you want a second closure here? What is the rationale? And they explained it to me like this, that in the summer, when you're hot, you want cool air coming in, you want to drag it through, and you want to exhaust it out of the back to maximize the flow across the head. But in the winter, when there's colder air that isn't so welcome, what you want is the air to come in here, around the head and exhaust. You do not want to accelerate the flow of air so that in the winter you would keep this third vent closed. Sounds fair enough to me. On one level, I felt it was a little bit of overkill. I've not tested it in all conditions, but that is the rationale from Shark, and I'm going to believe them that it works effectively. So the Spartan GT has a much improved, totally different interior to the Spartan. It feels a lot softer, it feels much more luxurious. For me, the biggest difference, however, is this neck curtain. This has a much tighter aperture around the neck than did the Spartan. If we can look there, this is far more now like a flip lid helmet which sits much more close to the neck. It's not tight because this is very elasticated, so the idea is it's going to sit tightly against the neck. That will stop noise coming in. Now, I did listen to a review from an American company where they went out with this helmet and they tested it on the road and they didn't reckon it was particularly quiet. And to me, that totally misses the point. A helmet is quiet and operates effectively when the fit is right. You can't just put any helmet on any head and say, that's a quiet helmet, that's a noisy helmet. The Shark has a rounder fit than a Shoei or an Arai. So If your head doesn't fit this, if you've not changed the cheek pads to get the right amount of squeeze on your cheeks and to stop air reaching your ears, this might well be a noisy helmet. But all the components are here to make this a quiet helmet. This neck roll I think is fantastic. This chin guard is much better than we had on the Spartan. So my view is, once you've got your head in there, there's not going to be a lot of space for air to come into the helmet. We can change the cheek pads. There will be an exchange scheme as there is with Shoei. So if you were to come to visit us, then we would put this helmet on, we would try the different cheek pads to find the perfect fit for you. And in my view, once you've got the right fit on this helmet, once you've got the right cheek pads, this is going to be a particularly quiet helmet, whatever some American video reviewers say. You've also got an emergency release system. I'm not going to go through it, but this one's a wee bit complicated. I think the idea is, in an accident, you want something that's incredibly simple. You put your finger in and pull it out. This one is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more fiddly. It's almost as though it should have come with an instruction manual. So it has an emergency system, and I'm sure if someone were calm enough on the scene of an accident, they could work out how to do it. But it's not as intuitive, it's not as simple as I think it could and should be. So interior-wise, I find it a really comfortable fit. I have a rounder head, so even though I love Shoeis, I cannot fit in a Shoei. My head is too wide at the back. This helmet fits me well, and as I've said, that's the secret. If we can get this on the right head, if we can get the cheek pads done, we can make it fit properly, and then this is going to be a quiet helmet. I think it's going to be a lovely helmet to ride in over long distances. Okay, so this is the GT Air 2, the Shoei GT Air 2, the helmet that Shark decided that they wanted to take on when they produced the Spartan GT. This helmet in plain white is priced at £340. This one is priced at £450. So on one level, they've succeeded on one of their objectives, which was to undercut the GT Air 2 in terms of pricing. Not that that's particularly difficult. This is a premium brand helmet. It's an expensive helmet. Producing a cheaper helmet is not going to be particularly difficult for any manufacturer. But have they matched it in terms of quality? No, I don't think they quite have. Some of the points I've mentioned before, I think it makes it difficult to have a helmet at this end of the market when you've only produced 2 shell sizes. Things like the Pinlock 70 tell me that they've cut corners. It just doesn't feel right. You just have this feeling that when you take a Shoei out of the box, you've got the best of everything. So whilst this is a valiant attempt, I think it's a great helmet. I think it's a safe helmet to ride in. I think the visor mechanism is fantastic. I didn't mention one point, I'm going to mention it now, about the visor mechanism, and I'm sorry that I didn't do this earlier on. It has the best detente I've ever come across. That is a beautiful, smooth mechanism. It's got, must be 8 or 9 different positions, and it's firm in all of those positions. If ever you wanted to firm it even further, you just put an Allen key in the locking mechanism here, and you can tighten it up further. So, a great visor, comfortable. I think it will be quiet on the right head, the ability to change the cheek pads and so on. The other thing that the Shoei offers that this doesn't is an integrated comms system. Now, you can get an integrated comms system for the Shark, but even the Shark importer in the UK is not keen on it. We're not keen on it. We almost never fit it. So if you end up with a Spartan GT, you will probably have a comms that goes on the side, which is fine, it'll work fine, but that will create wind noise and disturbance. No point, in my view, in taking a really quiet helmet and then putting a big box on the side. With the Shoei, by contrast, they have developed with Senna a special unit whereby you have the buttons on the left-hand side, the aerial here. It's all pre-channeled, it's ready to go. It's the mark of a premium quality helmet. Everything is thought through, it's plug and play. So in the final analysis, whilst I think this is a terrific helmet and great value for money, no, it's not quite a GT Air 2, but if the difference in money is a factor for you, and I'm not sure that it will be at this end of the market, the extra £100 is not going to be an obstacle for a lot of people, but if you set your heart on a top quality sport touring helmet and you set a maximum figure of 350, say, then this is the helmet you should go for. The other issue that I have to mention is fit, of course. which I've mentioned before, but what will happen here when people come to see us in the shop, if you cannot fit into a Shoei GT Air 2 because your head is too round, it doesn't fit the oval shape of a Shoei, then we will take it to the Spartan, and we will not be embarrassed by that. It's a great helmet. If it fits you, then it's going to be better for some people than the Shoei. So that's our summation. They're both great helmets. I think it was a valiant attempt by Shark. No, they have not quite succeeded in toppling the Shoei GT Air, but in so doing, they have created a helmet that is certainly a notch above the standard Spartan. No one need ever be embarrassed about wearing one of these. Anyway, if you'd like more information, you can visit the website www.motolegends.com. If you want to buy the helmet, you can go directly to the button top right of the screen. If you would like to subscribe to our email bulletins, we send out bulletins pretty much every day of the week on products as they arrive with us. Then at the top of the website, there's a newsletter sign up button. Click there, it's very simple. You will get our future email bulletins. If, however, you prefer your information like this videographically, then we would be simply delighted if you wanted to become a subscriber to our YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking on the button below. As always with helmets, it's a personal matter. You can take the best helmet in the world, but if it's the wrong size, if it doesn't fit you, if it's not right for your head shape, then you're wasting your money. A good helmet has to be fitted properly and fitted professionally. So ultimately, if you want either of these helmets to work, then our recommendation is that you come and see us in Guildford. We carry on the Shoei all of the cheek pads, all of the headliners. We are going to carry, as soon as they arrive with us, all of the cheek pads for the Spartan GT. So that way, come and see us, we'll measure you up, we'll do some tests, we'll make whichever helmet you decide to go for fit as well as it possibly can. Anyway, this has been Chris from Motolegends. Thanks a lot for listening and watching. We'll talk to you soon.